The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
So we talked at the top of the show, hashtag free Kevin Warsh, and it looks like he's going to be free. The Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, has withdrawn, and Justice Department has withdrawn the criminal investigation, the subpoena, which I might add the Fed violated. And the Fed's going to, the IG, the Inspector General of the Fed's going to take over, and that should satisfy Senator Tillis. The vote I'm reading in the news this morning, the Senate Banking Committee will vote Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, April 29th. Senator Bill Hagerty told me on the Kudlow show last night that the conditions have been met. There are no more conditions from Mr. Tillis, so you can get a 13-12 vote to report him out of committee, get him on the floor, couple hours of debate, and he'll probably pass on some kind of party line vote, would be my guess. Anyway, we got two sharpshooters here to talk about all this. John Carney is a Breitbart news editor for economics and finance and the co-author of the daily Breitbart Business Digest, which, by the way, is a must-read, and my pal E.J. Antoni, who is economist and senior fellow at Unleash Prosperity and the chief economist over at the Heritage Foundation. So, John Carney, hashtag free Kevin Warsh.
It looks like Kevin is going to be free to run the Fed. This is very good news. There was still some concern on Friday because we didn't hear directly from Tillis.
Right.
And the last line in Pirro's tweet announcing that she was dropping the investigation was that she could bring it up again if the facts warrant. I don't think that should be an obstacle to the confirmation because, frankly, that's always true. If, no matter what she said, if new facts came out that revealed some kind of criminality, of course an investigation would be reopened. She's dropping it. She's letting the Inspector General take over. So I think that's important also. We're still going to get an investigation into the cost overruns. That's very important because yes, there was a lot of inflation, but Donald Trump took a look at these. They do seem unusual. So we're still getting the investigation. It's just not going to come through a, federal grand jury and the Justice Department. So Tillis can say, yes, I won and vote for him and get this to the full Senate where Kevin Warsh will be confirmed.
Well, we hadn't heard a peep out of Tillis. I called him, by the way, on a cell phone, but he didn't return my call on Friday. Senator Bill Hagerty, who's a smart guy on the banking committee, said that Mr. Tillis had no more conditions. So presumably, and he said the vote could happen fast, and then we learned it would be on Wednesday. So presumably it's going to go through. What we don't know, E.J. Antoni, I don't want you to go to sleep during this colloquy between me and Carney. But what we don't know, we don't know if there was a deal of any kind that might have committed Jay Powell to leaving the Fed altogether. He's still a member of the Board of Governors, even after he steps down as chairman. And, he sees himself as a martyr for Fed independence, which is a point of view that Kevin Warsh destroyed in the hearing on Tuesday. But we don't know that. That's the only thing left. Now, you guys know I worked for the Fed a million years ago. It's the first job I ever had. It was at the New York Fed. in open market, I might add. But, the chairman has all the power. Every staff person, every darn thing goes through the chairman. The other governors have no power whatsoever. They don't even have the power to hire an assistant unless the chairman says yes. So I figured Warsh, who's been a board member years ago and is a good bureaucrat, he'll do it. He'll make it very uncomfortable for Powell to stick around. Not that anyone would pay any attention to him anyway, but what the heck? Take his parking spot away. That'll force him out. Anyway, you want to get him off you don't want to see Powell around, right? EJ, I mean, let's have a clean start. There should be some honor among thieves. I mean, give Kevin Warsh his due. Powell's been there for, 8 years. I don't know if you know anything about any of that stuff, but what are you thinking?
Well, I hear the plan is actually to give Powell a parking spot at the far end of the Fed building just to make sure he's got a long walk to work to try to incentivize him to leave.
I think that's right.
Larry, I think you're absolutely right. It's not a good look to have him stay on. Now, granted, it's not like he's going to have any power beyond what a normal board member would have. But it's not a good look. And I don't even think that Powell is interested in that because of what you just said. It was all a martyr routine, right? It was seeing himself as a martyr, which I guess is some kind of redemption arc maybe after he created 40-year high inflation and then froze over the housing market and then gave us a regional bank crisis in the spring of 2023, along with he played a key role in the national debt, the interest on the debt doubling in only about 4 years or so. So he has a very long list of failures. And actually, it goes all the way back to President Trump's first term when he over-tightened so much that it created a crisis in the repo market, the Federal Reserve's repurchase agreement market. We forget about that because it happened right before COVID in the autumn of 2019. But the Fed ended up having to conduct a $500 billion bailout of leveraged hedge funds, which was still ongoing in March of 2020. But again, COVID hit, and then we all forgot about what was happening in money markets because they let the cash cannon go at the Fed.
You're right about that. This is not a small point. It's one of the reasons Trump disliked him so much. The economy in 2018, gentlemen, the economy on a 4-quarter basis was growing at 4% plus by the second quarter of 2018. Now, I haven't looked at these numbers. Maybe they get revised. But we had it going, right? The tax cuts had been approved at the end of 17, and by the spring of 18, the economy was growing over 4%, and they started to tighten, as you noted. They tightened, okay? And they tightened a lot. And, and sure enough, that slowed everything down as we headed in toward the midterms. It was, the old Phillips curve, too much growth is inflationary. He just fell into that, the board staff. John Carney, he basically sabotaged that whole thing. Now, the economy picked up again when they eased back in 19. Pre-COVID, it was actually growing at 3. But, I mean, this is one of the reasons that he's a dummy, and it's one of the reasons Trump dislikes him so much. I remember talking to Trump about this when I was on the staff. I mean, we had it going like never before, 4% plus, and this jerk is tightening, and the inflation rate was nothing.
That's right, and Trump was absolutely right. You guys were right. You were in the White House at that time. The Fed had a anti-growth, right. and they still do. They had an anti-growth point of view, which was you guys had the economy firing at 4%, and they said we have to stop that, even though there was no inflation. Trump pointed this out. Trump got attacked for it all over the place as well, just for pointing out how biased this is. Look, I think Jerome Powell's biggest incentive to get out is if he hits the book market with a book called The Price of Independence, somebody's going to pay him millions of dollars for that. So he has a lot of incentive to, take his, martyr show on the road.
Oh, God.
So I think he should probably leave, even just for his own good.
Nobody will listen to him. Nobody's going to listen to him. I'm telling you, nobody will listen to him. But that was, that whole episode. You know, EJ, what you said last night on the TV show, though, is very important. It's a bit technical, but shrinking the balance sheet, in effect, the Fed is selling treasuries into the open market. Now, you know, presumably to the banks. They could let them run off, okay, but that has money absorption. That's essentially taking money out of the system. If you buy treasuries, you pay for it in cash. All right. If you sell treasuries, then cash comes into the Fed. So it's a tightening move, which would require lower interest rates to offset. That was a very good point you made. Don't think I don't understand this stuff, because once upon a time they taught it to me. It was 50 years ago, but I still remember some of it. It's basic open market operations. When the Fed buys bonds, they inject cash into the economy. When the Fed sells bonds, they pull cash out of the economy. So if they shrink their balance sheet, the net effect is they're pulling some cash out of the economy. And I would argue that lowers inflation and inflation expectations and gives them room to reduce interest rates without any open market impact, without any, inflation impact. Just, it follows as A follows B. That's what you were getting at, weren't you?
Exactly, Larry. You're 100% right here. And this is where, Warsh talks about how the Fed under Powell has the policy mix exactly backwards. They have been raising rates while they continue to grow the balance sheet.
Right.
I mean, it makes no sense. And so it's starving the private market for capital. It's artificially putting upward pressure on all kinds of interest rates, whether it's people trying to get a mortgage and paying a higher interest rate, or every month you're looking at your credit card statement and you're seeing how high the interest rate is there, whatever the case may be. And so what Warsh wants to do is what you just articulated: get rid of all of these excess holdings on the balance sheet, start paring it back down to pre-COVID levels, get back to reducing all of these asset holdings, but at the same time, pair that with these interest rate cuts. And it gives you room to cut without causing inflation because of what you were just saying. You're going to be extinguishing money. It's not going to be too much money chasing too few goods, which is what happened under Biden. It'll be the opposite.
It'll be more goods because you have the 100% depreciation and the business boom and all that. It'll be more goods chasing less money, which is counterinflation. It's disinflationary, which Warsh, John Warsh basically said that. I mean, it'll take him a couple years, and he's going to have to convince his committee. But the fact is, it's it'll be disinflationary.
He also pointed out, I think very importantly, that this strategy of balance sheet growth plus higher interest rates has a anti-populist effect. It enriches the richest people and it hurts the middle class because it drives up the interest rates of the middle class, while people who are asset wealthy actually benefit because all of the excess liquidity drives up asset prices, and it doesn't seem to have a very big effect. The other thing about it is it was never planned. When they launched QE, when they did QE 2, 3, 4, QE Infinity, into the COVID QE as well, nobody ever sat down ahead of time and said, you know what, let's grow the balance sheet to $9 trillion and never be able to bring it down again. And yet that's how we've ended up there. And I think one of Kevin Warsh's plans is, why let these catastrophes permanently transform the way monetary policy works? It was working really well for a long time. It didn't seem to work that well during the Obama years after the financial crisis. It broke down completely under Biden when we had the worst inflation in 40 years. Maybe this entire experiment in, large asset purchases, giant Fed balance sheet should be declared a failure. It hasn't worked.
Well, he basically said that at the hearing on last Tuesday. I mean, it's an odd story. Ben Bernanke, who basically is a Friedmanite, basically is a monetarist. He was the Republican, believe it or not, Republican chairman of the economics department at Princeton University. And the original QE was, I think, a good idea. But then he just kept doing it and doing it and doing it, and it became institutionalized. And Then we did it again in COVID. And, creating money is not the same thing as creating jobs or growth. I mean, creating money ultimately creates inflation. I mean, it's an odd story because Bernanke knew better. And Kevin Warsh, who helped Bernanke, but then Kevin became apostate and said, no, we're going too far. So this goes back to like 2010, 2011. So we're talking to John Carney of Breitbart, E.J. Antoni of Unleashed Prosperity and Heritage. Gentlemen, we had so much fun in the first segment. We only have 2 minutes plus left. John Carney, though, quickly, new definitions, alternative measures of inflation. Very interesting. You've been pushing that median CPI, the trend mean, chop off the high and the lows from the Dallas Fed. Is this going to improve the estimates, you think?
I think it will. I think these are much better guides to where inflation is going, not just where it's been, because the measures they use right now can be really distorted by big movements in just a few items. By looking at the median and the trimmed mean, you really do get a better predictor. And studies have shown that those are better indicators of what, and the Fed should be watching those. Kevin Warsh wants to watch them. And I just love that he's thinking bigger than just what the Fed has been doing for the last 20 years, basically.
Reform, change.
Let's change it.
Yep. No, it's very Trumpian, transformative. And EJ, it looks to me like no more dot plots. The summary of economic projections, which John mentions in his daily report, and the business about forward guidance. That's all crap anyway, EJ. They don't know. And they get up there. And why does he have to have a press conference every meeting when he has nothing to say? He just warbles on. People look at him. He's a pessimist by nature. He's this gray visage, and they think the whole country's going to hell.
Well, and Larry, these
really?
things between the dot plots and the press conferences, it especially became a joke once it was clear that the Fed was no longer data dependent under Powell. When you would have inflation moving in one direction during before one meeting, and then the Fed would decide to cut rates, but then the next time they said, no, we're not going to cut rates, or we're going to raise them.
What a lot
whatever
of crap.
The case may be. They were so terribly inconsistent that everyone became hyper fixated on things like the dot plots. Conversely, look at what happened under Greenspan, where before the Fed made an announcement, everyone knew what was going to happen just based on the data.
Man, Volcker years ago used to go in front of the Congress and just blow cigar smoke at him. Wouldn't give him anything. I'm just telling you should get a guy, go up there and say, we can grow the economy at 4% a year without inflation. John Carney, thank you. E.J. Antoni, thank you.